And a warm welcome to today's special talk and masterclass organized by the Navin Times. Calligraphy is often described as the art of beautiful writing, but it's much more than that. It's where letters become visual poetry, where every stroke carries elegance, intention, and emotion. Our guest today exemplifies that magic. A true trailblazer in India's calligraphy landscape, Sanjana Chatlani is more than just a calligrapher. She is a storyteller whose language is ink, curves, and flourishes. Based in Bombay, Sanjana is the creative force behind the Bombay Lettering Company, a boutique studio where words are transformed into bespoke words of art. Today, Sanjana is going to be sharing her journey of calligraphy into business and how she has today founded a business that is extremely successful. From Deepika Padukone to Louis Vuitton, she has been working with brands and celebrities and all those who love beautiful handwriting.
Hi Sanjana, and welcome not just to Goa but to the Navin Times and to all those who have come to hear you, to see what you have done with calligraphy. Calligraphy is such a niche art form. So let me start right from the beginning. You transformed your passion into a profession. When did you, Sanjana, first encounter calligraphy? What made you fall in love with it?
Okay, well, firstly, thank you, Maria, and I'm really excited to be here. I've had an amazing couple of months of interaction, you know, with the Navin Times, with Maria, and I'm really honored and excited to be here. And of course, I think if I can share anything about calligraphy, that's a privilege and an honor for me too, because it is a beautiful art form. So to answer your question, I think like a lot of us, I had studied calligraphy in school, maybe in like grade 6 or 7. I had taken a class, I fell in love with it, but just like any other kid, I found something else that interested me, or I went on to something else and I kind of forgot about it. It was not until much later on, actually, when I was at my first job. I was working for a French wines and spirits company. It was called Moet Hennessy, and I was on the marketing team, so I was learning how to do marketing for wines and spirits in the luxury world. And we used to have a calligrapher, an old man who would come to our office and write cards, because as a luxury brand, if you have to send any kind of gift to anybody, it has to go with a calligraphy message or a note. It can't go without that. So when we were sending a bottle of champagne or wine to some celebrity or some influencer, we would have this calligrapher come to our office. He was an elderly gentleman. He'd have these interesting tools and nibs, and I'd be like, oh my God, like this is still a thing, calligraphy is a thing. And I started watching him write, and I was probably already 24 by then, so I was not in college or young. I was very much in my corporate journey, but something about it really drew me to it, and I think that's when my mind started sort of just getting a bit curious to be like, oh, I'm super creative, I love doodling, I love writing, I want to see, you know, like maybe I could pick up something over here. And that's when I started, I would say, looking on Instagram for calligraphers, and I realized there was barely anyone in India. So I started looking at artists outside India. There were, you know, calligraphers in the US, calligraphers in Europe. I didn't even know that the White House has a designation for chief calligrapher. And there's a person who sits there whose job is to just write. And
neither did we. I don't think any of us here knew about that.
Yeah.
That in the White House,
and she's a teacher. Like now, she's a teacher of mine. Pat Blesh. She used to be the official calligrapher for the White House. And then I saw that there were calligraphers doing only corporate work, and then there was a calligrapher specializing only for weddings. And I said, this is an actual profession that I don't think anybody, at least in India, even thought that it could be made into a career or a profession. And I started looking for interesting artists and teachers that I could go and learn from, because there wasn't much happening in India at the time. So I think that's how the journey for me started, with that one encounter in my office. Yeah.
Right. You know, Sanjana spoke just now about how, you know, we learnt about good handwriting, and calligraphy starts, we think it starts only from good handwriting, but I think we've all been fascinated. I know when I have to give a gift to someone, I look around and ask someone, maybe you know, at home or someone outside, who has good handwriting. When we are presenting something to someone, the handwriting makes such a difference. I remember this one time my sister said, I'll write it, why are you making such a big deal? And I'm like, absolutely not, because her handwriting is so bad even a doctor can't read it. And there is a friend of mine, in fact she's in the audience, Melanie, who has absolutely lovely handwriting. Every time she presented a gift to me or to my daughter, the little card made such a difference, because the handwriting was so beautiful. So yes, I mean, I think we are all fascinated by not just beautiful things, but things that are very artistic. So coming back to your journey, Sanjana.
Yeah.
You were working at Moet Hennessy. So you were working at Moet Hennessy, and at the same time you started your own business. How did you balance the two? It's not easy.
No. You know, I think when I started calligraphy, this was in 2017, it purely, it was started with an intention of, I found something I love, I just want to explore it. There was no thought or idea in my mind of building a business around it. And I think that for me, when I look back, I think that was the best way I could have done it, because in the beginning you're not starting with any, you know, preconceived thoughts of, or some sort of a motive of saying, oh, I need to eventually make money out of this. You start with a very honest intention of learning something and just giving it your everything and seeing how much you love it, you know. And I think I was just so passionate about it, because just by a raise of hands, how many of y'all have tried calligraphy? Or okay, so you might know that it is an extremely therapeutic art form. It's an art form that's calming, it's meditative, it forces you to slow down, it forces you to forget the world and only think about and focus on the relationship between your nib, your ink and your paper and your breathing. I think my social life went down to like 0, because I was going to work from 9 to 7 and I was coming home excited to sit after dinner and on my desk for like 3, 4, 5 hours at night just doing like calligraphy. And the style I was learning at the time was called copper plate calligraphy. So it's a very, even within the world of calligraphy, it's a pretty niche sort of style that was founded in England in like the 14th century. And you worked with, which I will show you soon, the tools that we used. And that was not popular in India, that style at all. It was very European, very Western. I think people were very intrigued by that. So I think for me, I just honestly kept learning, kept trying to get better, kept trying to attend workshops without thinking of, oh, can I make a business out of this? Because I think first my intention was to just understand the world of calligraphy that I had just sort of scratched the surface. So for about 1.5 years I did that. I was doing calligraphy on the side. I had my full-time job, and I think it was only until, you know, end of 2018 that 1 month I just happened to check my bank balance and I realized that I was making more money with my calligraphy than my full-time job. That's when I said, oh, hold on, I think there's something that I can do over here.
There was something that you were doing right, actually.
Yeah, I think
that,
so.
You know, it's not everyone that, who has that artistic streak in them.
Yeah.
So there must have been something.
You know, and when I look back at it, I think this was the best way I could have, because a passion project is great, but it doesn't necessarily have to become your profit project. Your passion project can also always stay a passion project.
True.
I know some of the best calligraphers in the world today who do not do calligraphy full time, and that's also okay, because for them they have a full-time job and calligraphy is their creative outlet.
Right.
And they might be making some money from it, but the objective is not to build a business out of it. So I think it's also a very personal choice to be like, what is it that I want from this? Do I want to keep it as a passion project? Do I want more out of it? And I think what worked really well for me was doing it on the side. And the money I was making from my full-time job was helping fund my passion project to eventually become my profit project. And I think when you're building something on the side without the stress of
I want to make money with this,
you actually do it better, because the money is coming from your full-time job, and in my opinion, you don't make the best decisions when you're in fight or flight mode all the time, right? And in this scenario, you have a stable job, you're earning your money from your full-time job, and you're just fueling the passion project to see what you want to do with it. And you'd only reach a level of saying, I want to quit my full-time job, when you know that the passion project is actually sustaining itself, can take care of your lifestyle.
Exactly.
And I think that's what kind of worked for me really well. And I think that moment when I saw that I was steadily making more money through my passion project was when I had the confidence to say, okay, I think I'm ready to let go of my corporate job now, because I'm seeing results from this. I love it. And if I'm only putting in a few hours in a day, I want to see what would happen if I give it all my time.
All your time. What you said, what really stood out was she makes sure she turns up every single day. She works 7 days a week. It is not easy to have your own business. We have a lot of business students out here, and we all want that job which is, 5 days a week, 9 to 5, and we go home after we finish. But there are times when I call up Sanjana and she's not answering because she's either with a client or she's busy with her work. So perseverance is really important. Sanjana, you started as a solo, one woman, one person team.
Yeah.
And today you have expanded.
Yeah.
Like you rightly said, today with AI and everyone talking about, oh, it's so cheap, I can do it on the computer. Why should I go to Sanjana Chatlani or any other calligrapher for the, what I have in mind? I can do it myself. So from that one person, in a world right now where everything is AI motivated, how did this expansion happen?
Yeah.
What was it that you did or you didn't do besides, turning up every day and doing what you have to? What else did you do?
Yeah. So just to give you guys a little sense, I started the Bombay Lettering Company purely as a calligraphy studio, which meant I was solo. I was taking on projects where what we call social calligraphy. It's when you're doing it for events, for gifting. It could be in the world of weddings. So for wedding invitations, they'd send you the invites and you'd have to just address the envelopes really beautifully with the guests' names. It could be, like I showed you all, menus, place cards. It could be a corporate reaching out to me saying, we're doing a round of gifting and we'd like for you to handwrite the messages on all the cards. So it was very specific for gifting or events or social occasions where I would use my skill as a calligrapher and I would write. And I realized that I was enjoying expanding beyond calligraphy. I was enjoying taking charge of the entire project because I had control over the entire aesthetic. Because sometimes I would get really ugly cards that I had to do calligraphy on, and I'd say, oh God, I wish I could design this. I would have done such a good job. And I got to do that then. So we were designing the projects, we were printing the projects, and we were weaving in the calligraphy wherever required or wherever necessary. And slowly that's how we began to expand. I also realized that I could stay solo and I could purely focus on calligraphy as a craft because it's really niche. And in the world we live in today, I think the more specialized you are, the better it is. But there was something about building a business that excited me, and there was something about building something bigger than me that excited me. I also realized that if I went on holiday for 3 weeks, it meant my business would come to a standstill because my business was solely dependent on me and my hand. And that began to scare me a little because I said, okay, no, if I'm trying to build something over here, how can it be so dependent on just me? which is why then organically moving into a design studio was like the direction that I began to enjoy and embrace. And obviously now we're a design studio, with calligraphy being a core component, a USP, something people come to us for. But we're essentially a multidisciplinary design studio that eventually came over to be in the last 8 years.
Right. So what I'm just going to summarize what she said. Sanjana said basically you need to do a lot of research. You need to practice. You need to practice till you become really, really good, and then ask yourself the question, will I buy that end product that I have just created? Would I buy it? And of course, show up every single day. It takes a lot to have a successful business. And Sanjana, to my last question, because everybody is waiting for you to start your masterclass, and that is, where do you see Sanjana Chatlani's Bombay Lettering Company in the next few years, and where do you see calligraphy with everything again, with AI taking over nearly everything? Where do you see calligraphy in the next few years?
You know, we were having this conversation just yesterday actually. I feel like with everything getting so standardized and so digitized, anyone with a craft, anyone with a niche art form or a craft will actually be like a novelty. And I feel like we will be at an advantage because people will crave that human touch. You know, calligraphy, like so many other art forms, shows warmth, it shows effort, it shows that someone has taken the time out to actually write this for me, and that's going to go a long way, I feel.
The personal touch.
The personal
that's what
touch.
you're speaking about.
100%, yeah. I think so. I think what we're really trying to identify is which part of the business we remain boutique, which part is scalable, what we can do with it, how we can create products in like lifestyle products with art and calligraphy. Because I think what you realize with any art form eventually, and something I'm going to show you all in my presentation, is, okay, I've learned how to write something, but how do I now use calligraphy as a form of design? How does it become an element of design or even art? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's really interesting, because you know, you can do like what I did before, which is social calligraphy, which is purely just learning a skill of a style and writing names or sentences or paragraphs or cards. But then you move a step beyond to say, oh my God, can I use these letter forms and create art out of it? Can I make like art on a canvas? Can it be incorporated into design? Can letter forms eventually be a form of design? Then legibility is not that important. It's creating art. Right? So when I'm writing a card, legibility is important. The words are important. People have to be able to read it. But if you're creating art out of letter forms, it's okay if people can't understand what you've written. It has to just feel and look beautiful.
Right.
You know, so I think we're at that stage where we're kind of playing with calligraphy in its social form, calligraphy as art, calligraphy as design, using letter forms as a basis of design eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
Sanjana, I think that's about it from me.
Okay.
Everyone's waiting to see your presentation and to see the work, because they want to learn from you. And of course, one day maybe there will be someone from this audience who will be sitting on the stage and talking to us and telling us about how they have turned their passion into a successful business story. Thank you so much, Sanjana.
I want to do a quick demonstration to show you the style of calligraphy that I do. I don't think one lifetime is enough to learn all the styles of calligraphy that there are, but in the 20 or 30 minutes I have, I'm going to show you a little bit about the tools, the usage of them, how I write. I'm going to move from ink on paper to showing you how I digitally write on my iPad, and eventually how I take that and translate it into the world of paper and print. I'm then going to move on into a quick presentation that I call the commercial applications of calligraphy, which is essentially taking you through my process of learning, and that could be for anybody with any skill you might have. I like to divide it into like two parts. I'm going to take you through how I think about learning anything, and then how I have been able to apply this art form into a commercial sense to build a business around it. Okay, and just feel free to like ask me questions as I go, or we can leave the questions for the end. Just by, you know, a raise of hands for me to understand. You know, I did ask you if anyone has like a creative outlet or a passion project or a skill, but is anyone actually thinking of building a little business around it? Okay. So like I was telling you, calligraphy is an art form that requires a lot of patience. It's an art form that's quite technical, quite precise. You're working with very specific angles, you're working with specific rules, and what you're eventually trying to achieve is a form of consistency, a form of rhythm when you write, and you're really working with the rules. So when we write, you know, and when we practice different styles of calligraphy, what we're really trying to do is build muscle memory. What does that mean? It's the memory in the muscles of your hand, because everything we do is we're trying to create a form of repetition, right? Because if a particular style says you have to write at 55 degrees, you're basically working to work and memorize the 55-degree angle. If it says the proportions need to be in a particular ratio, you are working to make sure that you're practicing that ratio, to make sure that eventually when you move out of these guiding lines that are helping you, you can write on a plain piece of paper following all those rules. Okay, so there are two worlds, I would say, of Western calligraphy. One is known as the broad-edged world. Have you guys seen like Gothic, black letter, italics, different styles of calligraphy? This is the more prominent style where artists use something known as a straight holder, and they have a nib. All right, these are steel nibs, metal nibs. Back in the day, before the nibs were invented, artists and calligraphers used to use a quill. Have you guys seen quills? Right, they used to be goose quills or swan quills that calligraphers would prepare to write with. Obviously, after you know, the steel nibs came into being, they started using these. And then sadly, after the typewriter was introduced, a lot of calligraphers went out of jobs because they were taken over. But these are essentially nibs, and you put them into your holders and you write with them. The other world, I would say, which is a smaller world, which is what I'm going to show you, is the world of pointed pen calligraphy. Okay, it's smaller, like I was saying, and the style I do, it's called copper plate calligraphy. With this style, if you see, my nib is inserted not into my pen or my holder, but it's actually inserted into this little piece that's jutting out of my holder, which is called a flange. That's because this particular style of calligraphy that I'm doing is written at a pretty steep angle. So what it does is, if you can see, do you see that it's already helping me achieve that angle? Whereas if I were to use this holder, I would have to rotate my hand so much more to come onto that angle. So in this world of calligraphy called pointed pen calligraphy, we actually use a nib inside the metal flange of your holder and you're writing. Now, if you're ever going to learn calligraphy, any style starts by showing you something called guidelines. These are lines that guide us. You know, I was talking about building muscle memory, being able to write at a particular angle and making sure that you master that angle. That's what these lines guide you for. So when you start learning any style of calligraphy, you are going to practice on these guidelines. So just to give you, I mean, obviously we're not going to learn calligraphy, but these are the lines we work at. We have a baseline, we have a waistline, we then have ascenders, and then we have descenders. And for this style of calligraphy that I'm doing, which is called copper plate calligraphy, we write at an angle of 55 degrees. Okay? And when you learn any style of calligraphy, you will realize that the shapes that we create are really important. And the positive and the negative space are also really important. If I say positive and negative space, does anyone know what I mean by that? What is the positive and what is the negative? The positive is what I've written. It's the black. The negative is the space that you see inside. That's known as your negative space. But that's as important as the positive, because when you're learning calligraphy, you'll realize that it's very important to identify shapes that are being formed inside of what you've written. And in copper plate calligraphy, which is the style I do a lot and mainly for a lot of my client work, the shape you see is an oval. Can you guys identify that little oval in my white space? And it's an oval along that 55 degrees. So when I'm doing this style of calligraphy, everything I do is based on pressure. So if you see, if I apply no pressure, I get a very thin line. If I apply pressure, okay, let's show it to you without any ink. Do you see what's happening? My nib is actually splitting open. And so, when I apply pressure, my stroke is thick. So the main rule in this style that we do is when you don't apply any pressure, it's thin. And when you apply pressure, it's thick. And that's your mantra. And the rule is that every time you're going up, you're not applying any pressure. But every time you're coming down, you are applying pressure. And that's the concept of this particular style of calligraphy, that you work with hairlines, because your stroke is supposed to be as thin as like a strand of your hair. And you work with shade. So these are known as hairlines and these are known as shades. And everything we do is based on the pressure that we are applying. And like I said earlier, there are systems. So you're basically just creating shapes. So for the lowercase letters, we have a few shapes. So we have, you know, the thin up, we have a thick down, you have something called an overturn, we have something called an underturn, we have something called an oval, you have something known as an ascender loop, and you have something known as a descender loop. Oops. And eventually what we're doing is we're using all these shapes to create our letters. So if I wanted to create the letter A over here, which basic strokes have I used? The oval and the underturn. So I've essentially combined the oval to an underturn to give me an A. If I wanted to create a letter N, I'm using this one, which is the overturn, with another combination stroke. So this is one style of calligraphy that has its own rules, that has its own shapes, and all you're basically doing is combining those shapes to form your letters. Now, if I had to go beyond this, if I had to say, I want to create something where I need to eventually print it and I need to digitize it. One method could be taking what I've written and scanning it and then taking it into my computer. I know where I need to be applying pressure. I know that I've memorized the 55-degree angle. So everything I'm writing right now is in that angle. I know where to apply pressure because I know that every upward stroke is thin but every downward stroke is thick. So I'm applying pressure while coming down. And eventually you can export these files into PDFs, into PNGs, into JPEGs. You can take them into your design softwares, for example, and do a lot more with it. So, I mean, this is just a very quick, demo to show you how I move from ink on paper to digitizing something to eventually seeing it in its entirety, like in print. I had a client who reached out to me saying, Sanjana, we have 500 letters that we want you to write for a wedding. It was an invitation. And they said, but we only have 10 days and we don't have that much budget. So I said, how can you expect me to handwrite 500 letters for you in 10 days and you don't have the budget, because getting something written by hand is going to cost you money. So I said, okay, this was the invite. I said, okay, what if I write it once on my iPad? I'll write it out really, really beautifully. And what we'll do is we'll digitize it and print 500 versions of it. And that's eventually what we did for this. So I've written the whole thing out in copperplate calligraphy, which was the style I just showed you with this nib. I went into my iPad. I again wrote the whole thing out really, beautifully. I added my swirls and my flourishes and everything. And eventually we printed 500 of these on handmade paper. And that's essentially how we would, mass produce something that's eventually originally done by hand. But the thing is, you might say, oh, a font could do something like this. But I think people are realizing that something that's done by hand has a little bit of a personality, it has a soul, it has something that a font can't, replace. Like for example, I knew that the B could go over my L over here, and that's known as a flourish. Or I knew that, there's so much empty space over here because there's no sort of descender loop. So I pull the T up to occupy that space in between the two lines, right? I'm taking this D up and rotating it and making it really big. Because what you can do with your strokes in calligraphy is that you can actually identify where the negative empty space is. You can pull out a stroke and make it much bigger to occupy the space. That's what I've done over here, or over here, or over here. And those are things that a font can't really do. It's something that by hand where you got to go in, what you want to do with it. I want to make sure that I pull this W down or end the A in a particular way. Or now there was too much empty space here, so I'll just play with my D over here. And those are things I think you do by hand. And that's what I think really differentiates or makes it a bit different or unique and gives it that personal touch also. So for me, my process is always starting with nib ink on paper. I really know what it is I'm creating. A lot of times I'll first create my draft on paper before going into my iPad. I only use my iPad when I know I need to digitize something. So if it needs to be printed or it needs to be used in the world of like something digital, I would go into my iPad. But if not, and if I had to just write, I would eventually be writing with ink on paper. And I can probably just write a little something over here to show you all. Well, since this talk is so that's really the speed at which I'm also writing very large. You don't typically write so big, but when you're learning, and when I teach calligraphy, we learn at a large size because it's always easier to move down in size. But if you see what I'm doing, I'm focusing really on like shape or stroke at a time. Fun fact, calligraphers make a lot of silly spelling mistakes because you're never really thinking about the spelling, but you're thinking about what shape you're creating. So over here, I'm not thinking of the letter T, but I'm thinking of a thick downward stroke going into an undertone. Then I'm thinking of connecting this to an ascender loop, coming down. My ascender loop's going into a compound curve. Then I'm going into a half oval. So I'm actually thinking about the shapes more than the letters themselves. And a lot of times people make speed up videos on Instagram and make it look really quick and fast and easy. But I'm constantly thinking about the angle, making sure that I'm working at my 55-degree angle. I'm constantly thinking about where I need to apply pressure, where I don't need to apply pressure. I'm thinking about my breath and breathing, because I know that the more I inhale and exhale, it's going to make my hand more steady. Because when you usually write with a pen or a pencil, you're not really thinking about how much pressure do I apply. You just put full pressure with a pen. You're not even thinking about, do I need to control my pressure? Do I need to apply pressure? But now you're essentially thinking about all these things, because I'm between making sure I'm working with thins and thicks and pressure and no pressure and the angle and the shapes that I'm trying to create. So, you know, whether you're learning this style of calligraphy or any other style, you know, these are just sort of things you want to keep in mind when you're learning. You want to know that you have to go slow. You want to know that you have to really, really focus on that precision, the attention to detail, because it can't be done fast. It's not something that can be done very fast. And then of course, you know, once you learn a particular style, you can do so many different things with it. And that's why I got some of these invitations that I've, you know, made to just show you where all we eventually incorporate calligraphy into design. So whether it's over here or whether it's you know, in a card like here, where my illustrator, for example, will obviously create the artwork and the design and the florals, and we just weave in my calligraphy into it. Because when someone looks at this, you know it's not a font. It's actually custom lettered or custom created for that client or for that couple. So what I've done over here, if you see, these additional strokes and swirls are known as flourishes. A flourish is like an extension of a stroke from your letter form to make it look more beautiful, to occupy more space, and just give it something a little bit more interesting to look at, right? Because what you want a reader, when they're looking at your work, you want it to be pleasing to the eye. It shouldn't be stressful, so it has to still be legible and it has to still be easy to understand, but you want it to be interesting for them to look at, to be like, oh cool, I love how this T has pulled back like that, or I love how, you know, the T over here has looped in, or I love how the Y has come in. So, you know, trying to find different ways of creating the letter forms, I guess, is kind of what we love and what we do. So have any of you all heard of Nick Jonas and Priyanka Chopra? So I was the calligrapher on site at their wedding, because I had to do all the calligraphy for all the name tags and all the place cards and all the little gift items that people were taking back with them. We did calligraphy on site for the Cricket World Cup, where we were engraving on these really cool ICC water bottles. And I said, who's going to come, all these VIPs, who's going to come for a water bottle? We had 300 water bottles engraved in one day between two artists, because people just went crazy. So people love anything personalized, and people love seeing their name done for them live on the spot. And you know, if I had to do something for you and talk to you about it and explain my process and then give it to you, people go mad. So live events is something that we really enjoy doing, and it could be a wedding, it could be a corporate event, it could be a, you know, a store launch, and we find little items that are mementos or keepsakes or gifts, and people actually take them and they love it. You know, but the one thing I do want to say is, so this is every time I go and study with my teachers abroad, and I just came back from a 2-month you know, sort of workshop retreat, is that you have to keep learning, and you have to keep upskilling, and you have to keep getting better at what you do, you know, and you have to find ways to expand your horizons and try and be a couple steps ahead of everybody else that there really is. So this is like, yeah, you're going to study, you're going to learn, you're going to try and master your letter forms. But I think that these tangibles are not alone enough, because to really become a good artist, you need something that's known as the intangibles. Can anybody tell me what I mean, or what they think I mean by intangibles?
intangibles means like the qualities such as perseverance, dedication, and so on, which you cannot just abstract nouns basically, which you cannot touch, but they need to be.
Exactly. It's
Sanjana, he needs a big round of applause.
It's amazing.
Sorry?
Sakit.
Sakit, you're so amazing.
So, do you know, has anyone seen a painting of M.F. Hussain or Picasso or Raza? I mean, you can identify a painting without seeing the signature because they've developed a style that is so unique to them. Those fall under intangibles, and like what Sakit said, the things you can't see, your personality, your emotions, your touch. I could write A to Z in copper plate calligraphy beautifully, but it's going to look like anyone else's copper plate calligraphy that's beautiful. How do I make it mine? How do I make someone look at a piece of art and say, oh my God, that's Sanjana's work, without even seeing my signature on it? And I think that's something where we need to dive deeper into, whether you're an illustrator, whether you're an artist, whether you're a baker, whether you're a dancer. How do you find something that you can add your own touch into it to make it you, to make it unique, to make people be like, oh my God, I knew that was your work before even looking at the signature, because you've developed that style for yourself. That's why I say that, like with any art form, you can't stop at the tangibles. You can't say, oh my God, I've practiced so much, my letters look perfect, I'm an artist. I don't think so, because until you weave in your personality, it's not art, right? But a great teacher will make you find your intangibles, right? A great teacher will make you explore, will make you curious, will make you travel, will make you deep down dig into your own personality to be able to develop that style. And I feel that's kind of, you know, these are some of my teachers from all over the world. And so the reason why I say that before talking about the commercial applications of any art form, and in this case calligraphy, is because you can't just jump to suddenly trying to start a business out of something. You need your foundation to be really, really strong. You need your craft to be really strong and really good. That's why I say commercializing your work does not mean compromising your craft. It's actually the opposite, because your business is only as strong as your craft. Your business can only be as good as you are at that craft. You know, so a lot of times I see people who may not even be really good at something, but they're so enamored by building a business around it or making money. They're just like, oh my God, I just want to go and make money out of this. But I want you to take a few steps back to be like, okay, I may be able to make some money out of it, but can I get really good at it first? You know, and that for me is everything I just spoke about in terms of the tangibles, the intangibles, studying it really passionately, studying it really deeply, and then eventually coming to the commercial side of whatever it is that you're trying to build. And in my case, I tried to build a calligraphy business, and I tried to find all the different ways in which I could apply calligraphy. So, you know, just to give you guys a little glimpse into the world, to understand how I apply it, corporates and brands come to us saying, oh Sanjana, can you write cards, can you write letters? And all of this is done in the style I just showed you, which was copper plate calligraphy. So we do letters, we do name tags, we do envelope addressing, and we have handwritten letters. So the one on the top left ones are actually done like ink on paper, but the bottom one is what I showed you, which was me doing it once and then printing 500 of them. And you can also do that. Menus and place cards, so handwriting stuff for clients in the form of menus and name tags, people love. Do you think you can marry your calligraphy and the tree of life and make our wedding invitations? So we actually created a full tree of life with hand-painted illustrations and worked with them to create the entire wedding invite in the vibe and style they wanted. So one thing we realized with invitations is we're storytellers. We're basically bringing someone's vision to life. We're sitting with a bride and a groom, we're understanding what it is that they want, and we're using not just calligraphy, but is design, art, illustrations, painting, and being able to kind of bring it all to life. And that's something we really loved doing. If you see the invite over here, the bottom right one, there's some Devanagari and Hindi calligraphy as well that we've woven in. So I like to make sure that we add a touch of calligraphy into everything that we design. We started packaging design, where we said we can try and weave in our calligraphy into interesting ways of design and packaging. We do invitations, but again, the core of everything is calligraphy. So if you see this invite over here, the extreme left, 75 is what I did in my calligraphy, because it was an invitation for a 75th birthday, right? And the one in the center has just the text written on the center, on the band over there. But we try to find different ways in which we can weave in our calligraphy. So we do a lot of like greeting cards. So if you see the happy anniversary at the bottom, that's digitally done in calligraphy. And of course there's teaching. But what I'm trying to show you through all of this is that I've taken a craft, I've taken an art form, I'm studying it, different styles of it, and I'm constantly trying to find ways in which I can commercially apply it, or I can make products out of it, or I can make it lifestyle products that you can buy and you can buy in your house, whether it's the nameplate for outside your house, whether it's a mantra you want to gift someone, whether it's just a greeting card, whether it's the engraved champagne glasses you want to gift a couple for their wedding. The possibilities are endless. It's just your mindset and what you want to do with it and how you can take your craft to the next level.
Hi, Miss Sanjana.
Hi.
So I had a question. As an artist, did you ever feel like you're very frustrated when you were first starting a work, or like your progress was just not good enough, or did you ever feel like when you was just starting out with calligraphy, it was a waste of time or something like that? Because I feel like a lot of artists, we tend to be very, very critical of ourselves. Like a lot of people may say that you're doing really good, or your work is really good, or you know, they may compliment you a lot, but if you feel like your work is not good enough, then it's very hard to just shake off that mindset. So I wanted to know if you ever felt like that, but if you did, then how did you overcome it?
Yeah, because I think, like you said, as an artist, we're so emotional about our work, we're so emotional about what we do, that a harsh truth is that you have to become a bit thick-skinned, because not everyone is going to like what you do. Not everyone's going to love what you do, and that's okay. Another thing is, when you spoke about everyone telling you your work is great, don't show your work to your parents, your friends, your family. They're always going to compliment you no matter what. They're going to be like, wow, this is beautiful. But it's biased because they love you, right? You want to try and get real feedback from people who don't know you. And you want to work on that feedback. And people who don't know you will give you a lot more like honest feedback sometimes as well.
School was very, education was quite important as to your career. And what do you advise others who are also in school right now to be, whether they should be very critical about how their schooling is?
Into extracurricular activities. I was house captain, I was football captain, I was like always leading this talk, that talk. And I think that really helped me because my leadership skills started building from a very young age. Today I have a team of 8 people, and I think I'm really enjoying being a boss also, because slowly over the years I developed those skills of collaborating with other people, working with other people, leading a team for something, leading a team for a sport. So for me, I thought I liked the balance, studying obviously really hard, but also putting myself out there, being extracurricular, taking part in sports, taking part in competitions, because it really develops you as a person, which you may not see at that time, but over the years it really does come out, you know, because you learn how to talk to different kinds of people, you learn how to face like loss. You play a sport, you lose badly and you feel dejected and you'll be like, oh my god, and then you come back stronger, right? But the one thing I'll tell you that in the moment you don't realize it, but each year it's like a compounding effect, right? So in grade 10, you're like, oh my god, who cares about my board exams 20 years from now, nobody's going to care. But your grade 10 exams really affect where you get into for grade 11, right? Like high school. Then that high school really depends and kind of, you know, your college depends on how well you do in high school. And then your first job depends on which amazing college you went to. So it actually all kind of adds up, and you want to make sure that you're doing amazingly here to get the next one, and amazingly there to get the next one. And then when you're like work, you look back and you're like, oh yeah, the dots just make sense when you connect them. So I would say work really hard, but balance it out and have a good time, because I really balanced it out when I was studying, and I made sure that I was doing everything I could possibly do. I did summer schools, I did volunteer programs, I tried to do different things that would add to my portfolio. So when I applied to college, I had so many different experiences to talk about as well.
First question being is, what do you think, will AI take your job in the near future? Second one being, have you tied up with companies, and if yes, how?
Okay, so I did an AI workshop with my team the other day in the office, and I've realized that AI cannot take our jobs, but we have to use AI to very smartly help us, assist us, and aid us. What I'm doing, how to make things better, how to improve things. But I don't think AI can take over your core of what you're doing, which is designed for me. Tomorrow, if you're a real estate company and you just need to make a flyer or design a brochure, you might be able to use AI to just do that for you, because that's not your important core component. Being a design studio today, I can't make AI replace what we do. Okay, so we work for corporates, we work for brands. So like I showed you, things we do, like invitations, we design packaging, we design, so that's where we work with the company. They have an event coming up, we design the invitations. If they have something going on for which they need stationery made, or diaries made, or boxes made, so we make those things for them. So it could be a company, it could be a corporate, it could be a brand. It's anyone who requires these services of packaging design, of stationery, of invitation design and print, personalization. That's where we come in. Created by the pressure I'm applying, and there are different rules I use to write that style. This world is the world of broad edge. So this is different styles, different scripts. It's not based on pressure. Broad edge because the nib actually has a flat broad edge. And the strokes you're creating is not by pressure, but it's the angles. For Devanagari, they also have broad edge, but they are cut at an opposite 45-degree angle. And then you're working, the way I have basic fundamental strokes for copper plate, you have a set of strokes for Devanagari. And that's your design, your system. And then you build on that. So in Devanagari, they have a flat, broad nib. And you can also use brushes, you can also use different kinds of tools. But it's a different tool with different rules and different angles and different proportions.
I'm into business, family business for last 48 years. Okay, I'm looking after this business for 22 years. It's my family business, my father has started. I'm into screen printing things.
Oh wow.
Okay, printing industry.
Yeah.
We started as a screen printing, then now I'm into offset printings also. Means I make colors, inks, shades, all those things. So I was excited to know the bag which you showed me.
Yeah.
Okay, what type of printing is done on this
bag? This is a DTF.
Okay, it's not screen.
It's not screen. I had an option of screen or this. We went with this, but I usually screen print.
Okay. Yeah. I want, because I'm taking workshops for kids, colleges, all those things.
Oh wow.
Presently, I'm teaching them screen printing.
Oh wow.
Presently, I had a workshop in Goa College of Home Science in Kampala.
Yeah, we do a lot of screen printing work in our projects.
Okay. That thing, I was excited to know what.
You can come see it.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, this is Sanjana. What I really wanted to, what I really took from your whole presentation was that you said that a great teacher will help you find your intangibles, right? So how, as I know, because I really follow your page and I really love your content and I really want to enroll myself for one of your copper plate, classes. So how would you, what is there in your course that, that would compel me to really go for it? Sign up just today.
Yeah, well, yes, because the class I teach is an introduction to copper plate calligraphy. So I'm teaching you the script from the very basics in the right way possible. And I think that's the first step, right? Because you can't start thinking about other things if your foundation isn't strong. It's like saying, it's like saying that you want to make icing for a cake where the cake tastes horrible. So the cake first needs to taste really good, only then can the icing on top of it make sense. So in that case, the introduction and who you study your intro fundamentals with is important, because that's what's setting your base foundation, and then you build from that, and then you keep going. And then it's like I said, it's up to you to kind of keep thinking of what it is that you want to do with it. But I mean, I'll talk to you about the copper plate workshop later, but that's essentially like a 2-day class, which is an intro to copper plate.
Sanjana, thank you so very much. From all of us here, from all of us at the Navin Time, the Depot House and Goa 365, and of course all our participants, thank you. Can we have the last round of applause? Thank you very much. Would you like to say anything more? You have been saying a lot, of course, I know. But is there anything else, any message you would like to give them? Or would you just like to say bye and all the best? I don't know, it's up to you, of course.
No, I mean, I know I do talk a lot, so yeah. But please feel free to reach out to me if anyone ever has questions. I love chatting and interacting with people, so, you know, I will leave some. You can DM me on Instagram, it's just Bombay Lettering, and I'll be more than happy to chat. But yeah, if you have, you know, a little creative outlet, a passion project, something you want to do something with, all I would say is just like give it the most honest sort of shot you can. You know, dive deep into something. Don't just study it at like the surface level. Be genuinely curious and passionate about it, and get really, really good at it, so people know that you know what you're talking about and you're like the best at what you do. And then everything else will kind of just flow.
You know, a reminder that the Navin Times, we are 63 years old and we have been organizing workshops. We also have a podcast on Spotify. We have Talk from the Heart, which happens on Goa 365 channel, which is again uploaded on YouTube. So we have been doing these workshops and interviews and talks with people who have so much to share. Always free. I would like to stress on this part. And you know, even if you're visiting Goa and you're in Goa when our workshops are happening, you're most welcome. So from all of us again, thank you, and we are waiting to see you next. We now request you, we want 4 group photographs because we want to see everyone's face. So if we have 4 group photographs, it becomes easier. So when you buy the paper, you can see your face, yeah? Thank you again, thanks Sanjana, all the very best.